Welcome to the Inspired Evolution, and it is such a treat to be here today. Today I get to bring you the vibes from Mykel Dixon. Mykel, what's going on, brother?
Man, everything is going on.
Everything and nothing simultaneously. What is going on?
Yeah, exactly.
Such a treat to have you here. For those listening in, a bit of background on Mykel. Mykel delivers fresh, inspiring, and engaging keynotes. He moves audiences to meaningful outcomes. He's a jazz musician by trade, a gypsy by nature, and a fierce nonconformist and prolific anti-perfectionist. Mykel helps people and organizations thrive by rediscovering their creative confidence, reimagining their creative potential, and reinventing their organization for relevance in this 21st century renaissance, as he puts it. Blending his unique experience, a bias for action, and a magnetic stage presence, Mykel's keynotes are practical, poetic, and full of possibility. Every presentation is customized to drive maximum impact, and he uses live music, spoken word, visual storytelling, and audience participation, which gives him an edge in this field. Mykel is the not-so-secret weapon for conference organizations looking to inspire fresh, innovative thinking. His live learning experiences unite teams, ignite creativity, and equip audiences with the skills to solve complex 21st century business challenges. He gets it done.
That's funny. It's interesting listening to you read that, because that's that it's as though you've taken that straight from my website. but given my past and my history is far more aligned with you and this podcast and the whole space that you're coming from, but now operating in, the complete opposite of that world, and hearing you speak it through, I don't know, it's kind of like Inception. It's like, oh, wow, I'm back in the world that I came from, but we're talking about now the work I'm doing in the world that I'm not from, but then there's all, so it's quite interesting. It's a good beginning already, my man.
So explain that to us a little bit in terms of the world you're from. What does that world you're from originally look like?
Well, originally, so music was the thing, so I studied jazz and whatnot, but in terms of there was always a lot of depth, and there was always a lot of a spiritual element to my life and my work and everything that I was doing. Yeah. Being an artist or being a creative entrepreneur, accidentally, I guess, before it was even a title, back in the 90s, coming out of school and whatnot. It was very much just that the cliched thing, everything. I was looking for meaning, and there was a lot of synchronicity and a lot of serendipity and a lot of searching and seeking, a lot of backpacking around the world barefoot, and a lot of meditation and a lot of healing and whatever it was. And then at some point, the tables turned, and I found myself walking the corporate corridors, helping those people try and find their way to that world, which is a very interesting dynamic.
Well, it's interesting that you share that, because that's kind of the space I'm doing the opposite, which is exactly probably what you're alluding to just before. So it's a great place to have a conversation. There's something that you touched on there which really touches a vein with me, which I think probably this is the perfect podcast to sort of share this with the people, is my idea on creativity and entrepreneurialism is that they're actually the same. And I think you mentioned that just quietly just there as well. You just sort of tucked that into the conversation, which was, you were walking this path as a creative, as a musician, and you were living this life of an entrepreneur before this title entrepreneur became this new thing, rock star. Yeah. So what brought you, I want to know what brought you from, this life of looking for meaning, creativity, and as you put it, spiritual and barefoot backpacking, and then coming across into trying to integrate and bring some people into that world. What was bringing that medicine into the corporate world? What drove that for you?
Money.
Yeah.
100%. So the longer story short, so all my 20s I tried to be famous. I really wanted to be that rock star, and I lived hand to mouth, and I was super creative, and I had band houses, and we would write tunes until 4 a.m. and we would jump in the van and tour up the East Coast. And for about a year I was a busker, just purely a busker, and we used to make $2,000 on Swanson Street in 2 hours on a Friday night. Yeah. We were very, very good at it, and it was a cool life, and it was a cool time. And then I got close to 30, and I had no savings, no house, no future per se. All of my dreams all of my identity was wrapped up in this idea of, well, one day I'm going to make it. One day someone's going to choose me, and they're going to then give me the life that I think I deserve. And it didn't work out that way. And so, you know, in these what tend to feel like moments of clarity and epiphany, but actually are this long, slow burn of awareness, was, okay, I need a reset. I need a complete pattern disruptor. So I sold everything, all my vintage keyboards, of which I'll explain more about that in a minute, but I'm a collector of vintage keyboards. I love them. And sold them all, sold the van, sold everything I had, went overseas, and went to India. You know, I hadn't been there yet, so I spent about 6-7 months there. Nepal, did all kinds of stuff. Then I found myself in Cambodia and accidentally bought a beach bar. Then built a guest house. I had a Mexican restaurant literally 10 meters from the water. I did that for another year. It was amazing. Sold that. Then built a geodesic dome in the jungle.
Cool.
And I lived with my 2 dogs. I did yoga and wrote a lot of music, a lot of songs, a lot of stuff. And it was during that time, probably towards the end of that year, that because I wasn't sure if I was going to keep going or if I was going to head to Central America and open a bar there. I didn't know. And I was creating all this content, all this music, and I wrote a musical, and I wrote lots of poems and stories and stuff like that. And then I realized that all of it, I still wasn't at risk. It was still very safe and even though I was alone in a dome in Cambodia, which is often quite dangerous at times, very safe. And something in that, you know, made me realize, hang on a second, there's more for me to give to the West, you could say. There's more for me to give back to the place that I was born and the tribe, I guess, that you could say that I arrived into. I didn't know what that was, but I knew it was going to be different to pure music, and I knew that it was going to have to set me up for the next 10, 20, 30 years of my life in terms of money and in terms of security. And so then I came back with literally, it was just a clear intent and no clarity whatsoever of the how. You know?
Nice.
Yeah. But then it was powerful. So, I mean, this is quite a long rant, but I'll give you the whole spiel.
Anyway. Yeah, please. This is what space is for.
So then we came back and I got a job cash in hand working for my friend's mother's publishing company. So I was packing books, I was doing a few gigs. It felt very familiar. I was like, hang on, I've been away 3 years here. What's going on? And then an opportunity came up to manage the culture of a innovation space, like a startup hub, co-working space. And I just engineered myself into that role. And to get that role, I actually wrote a spoken word piece and a song and a film clip. And that was my resume, because I'd never gone for normal jobs.
Yeah, awesome.
I'd never queued up like everyone else. I'd never written a resume and sent it off like you do. So I leveraged the skill I had.
That you had.
And it cut through. And so I got the gig.
Incredible.
And then from that, you know, built out a whole new network of relationships and met people operating in that startup space and entrepreneurial space and even big business and even government, and everyone started to come to this hub, and I was kind of at the center of it. And then I started writing content without realizing it, but I had ideas about how to run a culture, about how to bring people together, about how to inspire innovative thinking. And then people started asking me very organically, hey, can you come and share that thing with our team? Oh, do you mind if I bring my team into the space and you can talk to them for an hour? And I didn't realize that I was starting to become a speaker / consultant / advisor. It was all very organic. And then, but still having an idea of it. And then I met someone that was doing what I'm doing now, and he was super cool. He was a young guy, really funky. And I just thought, man, you're it. You're what I've been looking for. How do I do it? And I got very close to him, and he mentored me and kind of took me under his wing. And then before I knew it, through a lot of risk, a lot of vulnerability, and a lot of humiliation, somehow arrived to where I am now, which is I couldn't even begin to tell you how different my life is compared to what it was before I left for India.
Yeah, incredible. Sounds
and can I add one thing? in the craziness of it all, if I can, offer anything to anyone. So when I was 29 or 30, I thought, I can't believe I'm going to sell these keyboards. There's 3 vintage keyboards I had. One's a Yamaha CP70, one is a Whirly, one's a Rhodes, Fender Rhodes. And the collector's items, when you get one, you hang on to them, you never sell them, that's just it. But I needed the money to go, and I thought, you know what? They're going to come back to me. So last year, that's the CP70. That there is the Rhodes. The Whirly. And right there is the Rhodes underneath that painting.
Yo! Yes! How's that for a win?
And you know what else is crazy?
Yeah.
And I mean this with no sense of arrogance. This is completely humble or whatever. But just the guy's like, this is how much I want for him. And I said, no problem, man. Done. Take it. No question. Because I had the resources behind me that what at one point was, oh my God, I can't believe I'm going to be getting rid of these. I'll never be able to afford them again. To now be, yeah, man, I'll buy them with credit card or with cash now. What do you need?
Sure. So
it's
amazing how I love these little tokens that we end up with in our life that sort of like these little indicators. They're like these little flag points, like a little milestone. Like, isn't that
awesome?
Just a really incredible sort of like you've almost danced a ritual with yourself without even knowing that you were in a ceremony. It was like, yeah,
exactly,
really.
And and a part of me, and I think a part of us does know. I think there is. You're in it. At least some of us do, but I think all of us do on some level. And it's trusting that and leaning into it and dancing with it. That then it becomes so blatantly obvious that you are.
When moments like that occur, for sure.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, wow. I'm a bit speechless. This is new for me. This is such a good story.
I hate. I guess I get your audience, and I wanna just. I'm giving up all of the shit that everyone has to deal with when they do a podcast, and oh God, I've got to talk about myself. It feels so self-indulgent, but it is actually can be of service to others. So I'm just going to dive in and give my story because I think I think there is value in it, man.
Yeah, so that's actually something really interesting. Let's take that as a tangent because I've before I started the podcast, I actually had hang-ups about starting a podcast. I'm adverse to, the two talking heads, actually what we're doing here, and sort of going, hey, this is a good idea, implement this into your life, because I guess the podcast for me came from this gathering that I hosted in my house for about a year called Mandala Moments. And people came over and we all sat down. I brewed chai, so I became Mr. Chai, which worked culturally, good fit. And so people came over and I brewed chai and we sort of sit and we discuss things like whether it was Jungian philosophy or Stoicism, just not really adhering to anything, but just sort of like flowing with ideas consistently and just all these themes would permeate. And people got a lot out of the conversations like, you should do a podcast. And I was like, the whole reason this thing works is because Amrit's getting something out of Mykel. Mykel's getting something out of Christina. Christina's getting something out of Stephanie. There's no guru here.
Totally.
There's no one that's sitting up here going, my idea is for you, It's just you take what you can out of the space, and the space is consistently offering up all this stuff. And that's why the podcast was like this really incredible journey. And the reason I bring this story up is because I've learned to ride this edge now in podcasting, which is, for me, it's all about just bringing my innate curiosity to your story.
Yeah.
And so there's that place where it's like, okay, what's your story? Why are you doing what you're doing? And what were the passions, the whys, the interests, the curiosities that drove that? And I've learned that there's a really humble place to do something. I don't have to be Mr. Ego and be like, hey, like this is what you guys should be learning about. That's the meta, that's the story from the background. Like, obviously I'm passionate about health. Obviously I'm passionate about purpose. You can look at the podcast titles and just see what I'm into and what I'm willing to promote. Not from a place of ego, just from a place of curiosity. But the storytelling rides the groove of humility consistently again and again and again. And it's so much wiser than the ego as well, like I've noticed, is because you'll share your story. And out of that, I got like this whole story of like trust and surrendering, right? But someone else will listen to that and they'll get something about like a lack of attachment, and it's like there's all these different things that people can get from storytelling, which is why I'm really excited to have you on, because like you were recently awarded as a speaker, and I'm just really excited to know that you do, like, I've watched a couple of your keynotes as well, and it is storytelling at its, if I may say so, at its finest. You do a really good job of it. And I just want to open that up because as time immemorial, you know, like especially the Indigenous culture here, you know, passing like wisdom through story, through song, you know, it's like, it's technology that's way older than, you know, you and I are, you know, and a lot of our generations as well.
Can I even go back to what I think you just said? Something really beautiful. It's a great context to tie in with your listeners in getting where, well, just for anyone wanting to get anywhere in life, that curiosity that you're speaking of, the way that you're approaching this keynote, or the way that you could approach storytelling, the way that you can approach the leap in your career from corporate to full-time creative, or vice versa. If you come at it from this humble, relentless, obsessive curiosity, where you cease to exist because it really is this fascination. You're just so immersed in whatever you're dealing with, or whoever you're speaking to, or whatever you're facing or hearing. That it's a partnership. There is always a conversation that is willing or wanting to be heard by you, above and below the conversation you're actually having. If you come from that beautiful, curious, open, like, wow, because you could be, so you've done 4 other podcasts today, and you could be exhausted, right?
I'm so pumped.
Exactly, because you're curiously engaged, and it's a source of energy, it's a source of power. But then translating that from, you know, this mystical, spiritual place that we love to dance in, to your career progression, to how you can get noticed more in your market or in your organization, to how you can start charging more, to how you can get that promotion or whatever it is. It's because if you're that curious, you're going to see new, novel, original ways to articulate and deliver value. You are going to, this is the entrepreneurial, the creative, the artist, you know, the whole mantra for it. It is all about bringing something new into being that wasn't there before, smashing 2 things together, you know, just mixing some ingredients, going, wow, check this out.
Yep.
And that doesn't happen unless you're curious. Like it's the bedrock. It is the gateway to a successful career, to a successful exhibition, to getting work out, to starting a podcast, to doing whatever it is you want to do. And if you're not curious, you know, people say, oh, but how do you get curious?
Yeah, it's good. Just going to ask you that.
Yeah. Well, just sit and look at something and get bored, and then notice that you're getting bored. You know, like just go and have a conversation with someone. And if you're getting distracted, you want to look at your phone, notice that you're getting distracted and that you're trying to look at your phone. Just start getting a little meta on yourself and going, man, look at what I'm doing to disconnect. Look at how I'm disengaging. Look at how unconsciously this is all happening, like in an instinctual sense. But right behind that is this, it's like this army of horses and these, you know, warriors that are just like, let me at it. What is it? Like it, you know? It's amazing. It's inherent in us. It is innate. But we're in the way for a multitude of different reasons.
I'm curious about diving into the reasons. I know that we could talk about that till the cows come home, but maybe
of course you're curious.
Case in point. But yeah, the lack of boredom in our lives, you know, it's something that I've actually, I think in the last few months, been like actively going out of my way to. This is going to sound ridiculous, but this is what I do. I actually have to put my phone in another room to eat. Yeah, just to eat. And it's just like, what? Like, why did that become a thing for me? You know, it's like, at what point was it just like, I'm eating, I've got nothing to do. Yeah, I'll just flick, you know, but now I'll like put it away and I'll like actually stay with my food and be like, cucumber, onions, you know, like actually just spend the moment to be, this sounds woo-woo now, like stay in the moment, be present with my food so it like nourishes me and like the whole way. But boredom. Like, I can't even handle boredom while I'm actually engaged in eating something, which is like, that's an occupying task, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty insidious. Like, I find technology is like, it's got amazing, like, look at us, we're having a conversation here, you know? You're in Geelong, I'm over here. It's incredible that we get to have this conversation over the airwaves and people are listening all over the world. Ridiculous, right? Incredible blessing. But when it's left unchecked, it has this sort of creepy crawly sort of way to like just eradicate boredom, which, like you said, is a bedrock for so many amazing things.
Yeah, and I'm not one for the science of things, but it's in an era of fake news, it's kind of all we've got in a lot of ways. But there's new stuff coming out every other day that we've known anyway, but that confirms what becomes available to us when our brain is in different states of boredom or, whatever brainwaves, where it's just, you're driving, you don't realize, then you arrive, you go, oh man, wow, shit, it almost feels dangerous.
Yeah.
And yet it's quite blissful because you were just off in this other place and you realize, oh, that's right, I should give them a call. And it's, there's just so much value in that. We completely, and I would say recently, definitely having 2 kids under 2, and I have quite an aversion to socials at the moment.
Yeah.
And I started back in October last year. I started a 5-year project, and it was to put out a new vlog video every week for 5 years. I do these 50-week or 50-day projects, so I wanted to step it up. And I went 3 weeks without doing one, then I did like 6 in a row. Then I've now gone another 3 weeks, and I just haven't looked at Facey and LinkedIn and Twitter and Insta and all of that. And I don't miss it, man, at all. And I know I'm not alone. I know there's a lot of people like this, feeling like this, particularly about wanting to build careers or, this entrepreneurial thing. Well, how else do you build a market or a network if you're not on there, if you're not feeding the beast, if you're not creating content? I don't have an answer for this. I mean, I have one that works for me and something that I'm exploring, but this is definitely a challenge that everyone's facing now that we're all content creators. Now we've all got the tools and we're readily able to make podcasts and to make vlogs and to write articles and share them. We are now all doing it. And so cutting through
has a whole thing of its own.
And if that's even what you want to do, it's quite what I find. I feel like ranting again. Can I do a little rave?
Please.
So what I find interesting, because I do a lot of mentoring stuff, and a lot of it is with executives or business people wanting to be more creative, but then kind of in my spare time, almost as a way to give back, I work with artists trying to help them to get more savvy in a business sense. And one thing that is just, it's essential, it is so vital for the more creative types is, or even both ways, you have to be really clear. Even if you're not clear on exactly where you want to go, you have to be clear on what's enough in terms of money or in terms of time or in terms of networks or whatever it is. Otherwise, with this social infinite world that we're in, you will forever drown in infinity. But if you strip it right back and go, cool, so I know I need to make X $1,000 a year, and I know I've got 10 different ways to do that, but 3 of them are probably the most profitable, most meaningful, most beautiful ways to do it. Well, I'll do those 3. And then what do I need to do? Strip it right back to like, cool, so what do I need to do today? Get that stuff in order and then stop. Like once that's done, don't keep this endless run. Just stop a minute and enjoy that that you're now
safe.
Yeah, you're sustainable. Otherwise, I know people that are doing incredibly well and they have no time and they're chasing this endless beast. And it's like, but dude, that was never what you set out to do. You set out to have more time, and all you wanted to do was have enough resources and whatever that you could have more time to do the things you love. And now you've got all the resources in the world, but you're drowning.
Yeah.
And I think that's because of the internet. I think not solely, but I think we're all quite swept up in this infinite information, infinite possibility.
Yeah, information's an interesting road, isn't it? Because I often, like, even as reflected on this for quite some time. It's been a meditation for me, if you will, in that my grandfather's grandfather, so not that long ago, he settled his own village in India. Now it's got like tens of thousands of people in there, yeah? But for him to know why grass is green would have just been, okay, so that's going to be a lifelong meditation for me. Like, someone may come my way and explain, some mystic traveler, that, like, you know, some snake died and gave its colors for the grass to be green, you know?
Yeah.
But the whole idea of chlorophyll, you know, that was, he may have chanced across the scientific right reason for it, that there's, you know, this bio process that occurs in a blade of grass. But that was only not even 6 generations ago, right? Like, he would have had to wait years, if at all, for someone to come past and give him this piece of information that he was looking for, right? And in today's day and age, like, that's just been an epic meditation for me again and again in life, you know. And then I like look at the phone and how much information comes my way. To be honest, it brings a lot into question for me. I've been working on a PhD for the last 2.5 years, and to be honest, I'm like subscribing to a model of education that I do not believe in at all. Just because we don't learn that way anymore. You know, my personal belief is that actually YouTube is the new classroom. When you look at people and like having like informed conversations in the comments, people are like engaging with exactly the content they want. They're asking the questions they exactly want to ask. And then people are writing back to and from that, and they're learning so much and they're sharing appreciation for stuff. And I look at that and I'm like, that looks like more like what I expect a classroom to be. And the amount of stuff I learn in like an hour and a half of exactly the content that my curiosity wants to arrive towards, you know, it's incredible.
It is. Yeah, it is. No, you go.
I was actually going to ask, you know, how do you find your way like weaving through that like awareness of, you know, not oversaturating the information and bringing the creativity into, you know, for the audience that you're prescribing creativity as the future for into the, yeah.
Well, with that beautiful, I'm sure you've seen, you know, Khan Academy, Salman Khan, the guy from India, how he flipped the classroom with the kids and stuff. Yeah. And you're right, it's beautiful. It's liberated knowledge in a way, in that it's accessible to all of us. And I want to get, like, going back to your grandfather, something that I still try to reconcile all the time is we are always seeking this external affirmation or confirmation of a particular idea. And so we're endlessly seeking information. We want to confirm, you know what, I need to know. Rather than, or sometimes at the expense of, sitting and waiting to find out why the grass is green. Because the grass is green, like, on one hand, sure, because of chlorophyll, but it's also not like why the grass is green. Like, it is, if you're looking at it through a lens of, you know, well, I want to know why the grass is green so that it, you know, blah, 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 blah. But why is much more philosophical, and it's much more subjective than a merely, well, chlorophyll and whatever else it is. And funnily enough, you know, you reminded me of this Einstein quote. It's not verbatim, but basically he said, look, if what is being experienced is expressed through a lens of emotion and intuition, we call that art. If that same thing's being experienced and expressed through a lens of logic and reason, we call it science. So it's two sides of the same coin. Yeah. And I think that there's something, you know, we're seeing definitely an explosion of science, of rational thought, of logical, of analytical, critical, you know, progress has come from that. And now I think, you know, we're seeing what it's like when we have favoured that way of thinking and that way of being in the world. And now there is this pendulum swing back to a more creative, artistic, emotive, sensory, aesthetic approach.
And is that what you refer to in the Renaissance?
Yeah, pretty much. So the Renaissance, the literal translation is bridge. So it served as a cultural bridge from the Dark Ages to modern history. The same thing is happening now between everything that was pre-AI and now what's going to be a fully integrated AI-driven existence. We are going to live in partnership with our technology. So we're living through a cultural bridge because it's not just a technological transformation; it's a cultural one. We have to develop relationships with our computer. We already have. And develop relationships with all these tools and movies like Her, with Joaquin Phoenix and stuff like that. That is just, it's beautiful and terrifying and inevitable. Like it's here. It's amazing. So given that, now it's the 21st century Renaissance, and at the same time as that's quite terrifying, it's disruptive, there's a lot of chaos and destruction, there is also, like the Renaissance back in 1700s or whatever, it's a time of flourishing, of human flourishing, culturally, artistically, like a human development. The opportunities are profound.
Yeah.
To be a beautiful time.
Yeah, it's interesting because what you're touching on, it really strikes a chord with me because I stuck for a while being an engineer, and I just could not, for the life of me, understand. I appreciate poetry, and I wrote a bit here and there when I was inspired, but in terms of the real value of it, it was just what is this? You can't build a bridge out of poems. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Right.
Cannot build a bridge out of poems. It's literally right. That was the engineer.
I love it.
And since then, it's been this really long journey to realizing that actually poetry is and music is kind of what gives you fresh landscape. The poet is trying to give you a brand new canvas to draw a whole new world on where there are no bridges.
Yeah.
You just soar from one place to the other, and it's whoa, and then you play that with science, and it sounds really out there, but that's taken me years to really come on this journey and really land here where it's holy cow, art is just as important as science.
Yeah. Well, and they're the same. They are the same thing. It's two sides of the same coin, because poetry itself there's a beautiful economy of words. It is very efficient. It is very, to engineer or to architect a phrase or a stanza or a verse it takes both sides of your brain. It's not all airy-fairy, it just comes to you in this moment of whatever. There's a lot of refining and defining and left and right brain. And similarly, a bridge is a bridge, but then as soon as you start thinking about, well, what if we marry the materials with an aesthetic? What would it look like if we did this? You're starting now to bring this whole creative, this intent for beauty to marry with functionality, which we're going to see a lot. I mean, there's been so much work done on this stuff, it just hasn't hit the mainstream for hundreds of years. But there is something I'm exploring a lot at the moment, is this idea of aesthetic intelligence, that in us there is beauty matters. And, and not just...
Curious thing that, isn't it?
And not just as entertainment or decoration or to make us feel good inside, but actually look at nature. A flower is beautiful to attract a bee. It's all by design, and we need to consider beauty not just in terms of a visual aesthetic, but also, how does it feel to work in this office? How does it feel when someone meets me for the first time? What's the environment like? How does that conversation feel? Is it beautiful? Because if it is, and it's also impactful, it still delivers value in some way, it's exponentially more powerful. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. It's a really intriguing point that we've hit, this aesthetic intelligence thing, because I was talking earlier today about form versus function. And we were discussing, because my whole curiosity is about ontology. You'll find that the one thing that drives Amrit is ontology. Structural engineer, passionate about architecture, meditator, now coaching meditation and mindfulness, inner space, outer space. It's just that consistent.
Right.
But this idea of, and I think this is like, this conversation has organically come to a really great place, because we were talking about function and science and science and science, and then the form, which is the poetry and the art. And, you know, I'm kind of, in the back of my head, I can feel the architect from the Matrix standing behind me right now, just going, architect. It's like, but it's that whole idea of like form versus function. And I've thought a lot about this myself as well, because my favorite sports is the F1s. That's the engineer in me. But the cars are beautiful, right? And every year, without fail, the car that is the most aesthetically pleasing is the fastest.
Wow.
And it does my head in, because it has the aerodynamics for it, right? And it's just, and aerodynamics trumps engine power, and it's like the laws of nature are requesting from that car to be as beautiful as possible.
Exactly.
So this idea of aesthetic intelligence is profound.
Yeah. And I think the key piece in this is that it's not versus, it's not or, it's not but, it's and. Form and function are both part of the same, and they couldn't exist without each other. There's a beautiful duality in the whole singularity that is existence, and if we are more open to that and more work with that, we'll be so much more effective, a la the F1s. It's not like there's a functionality to the form. Like there's the reason why these beautiful cars keep winning is because the form of beauty is so much more effective at, like, you know what I'm saying? A beautiful car is goes so much faster because, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, it's there's this guy that wrote the book called The Design of Everyday Things. His name's Don Norman.
Exactly.
And
right.
If you read his book like 25 years ago, it was all about function. And I bring this book up because I want to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, great.
Because he revised it like a couple of years ago, and now it's just gone form.
I know.
And he's like, and people think like I'm this massive hypocrite, but it's just like this realization that I've had. Yeah. And so now he just stops and like, he's a bit ridiculous. He's got like these amazing like $1,000 gold-plated cheese graters like sitting in his like foyer, which he never grates cheese with because it's all about how beautiful is this now.
Exactly.
He takes the piss out of himself, which is amazing. But I bring this up because my curiosity goes to the point where it's like, was that always like, is this always going to be the case? It's like, let's put up the scaffolding and then let's drape it in something beautiful, and then let's continue to put up the scaffolding and then let's drape it in something beautiful. Is it always this dance between form and then the Renaissance? And then, you know, is this kind of what you expect?
Yeah, probably. Like a spiraling, circling, you know, there's night, there's day, there's man, there's woman, there's left, there's right. There always feels to be like, well, we do a bit there, we do a bit there, we do a bit there. The idea is that we're always trying to return to this unity. Awesome. And we'd love to be able to come from pure form and function at the same time all the time. Maybe it's not possible. Maybe that's not the point. Maybe the tension exists. Maybe the momentum, that we seek and that drives everything forward lives in that tension of form and function, left and right, man and woman, night and day, yes and no.
So my question then is, because I know we discussed that what brought you into bringing this world of form into function was all like initially money and getting grounded, but what drives you now?
I mean, that was 50% of, what drove me. But the other thing I think is I want more people. Okay, what drives me now? This is a good question. What drove me for a long time was the wounds, creative wounds. We've all got them. And I, had a couple of doozies like everyone else when I was a kid, and I used to throw these events and I'd sell them out, and there'd be 500 people, and I'd read this poem, and then the band would start. It was all about bringing everyone together. It was really different to all the other bands at the time, and I think that's why I wasn't successful, because it was far too hippie in the markets that I was trying to be in. But ultimately, it was about bringing people together to create a safe space so that they could step further into their full self-expression, a space that they could self-actualize. And then I realized quite early on that the whole reason I was doing that was actually to have a safe space for me so that I could have my full self-expression and my self-actualization. I actually feel like I've moved through a lot of that. Now, I don't think that I, by any means, am I fully realized as a being, but I think I have actually, which is a beautiful thing actually, just coming aware of this in this conversation. It's a beautiful part to be able to close that chapter in a sense and say, yeah, I'm not driven by those wounds as much anymore. They'll always be a part of me in some way. But now I think I really am driven by, I want people to know this stuff. I think that everyone is better when they feel more. You know, when stop thinking or keep thinking, but just feel a little more too. And when you catch up with people you haven't seen in a while, or strangers or colleagues, and you've done the big heavy day of work, and then someone puts the tunes on, and then someone mixes up a drink, and there's like fresh mint in it. There's just all these little elements that are real and that are sensory and that are aesthetic, that can't help but get you. And suddenly you thought you were exhausted, and then you're back and you're vibing and you're connected and you're alive. That's just one tiny example of what's possible if we allow for form and function. We allow for, engineering and art, science, whatever the polarity is. Yeah, I just think, wow, we're only skimming the surface of the potential. What would the world be like? I always used to think this as a kid. How many Jimi Hendrixes and Picassos and Pablo Nerudas are in the suburbs right now, laying bricks and working in a supermarket or being investment bankers, because that's the only way they could survive. And yet they were gifted. I mean, all of us have the potential to be wildly creative beings, but there are some that just have an extra little something, and they're the Bowies and the Princes and the whoever else's. How many of them are like underneath our
overlay?
They're just, and that could be you and I, man. Like, who knows if we really surrendered, if we really, we didn't just surrender and let go, we actually ran with everything we have, burnt the boats, and I am going to see what my full creative potential is. Yep. What would you give to the world? Where would we be without these profound creative beings and their expressions? We wouldn't be talking right now, that's for sure.
We'd be soaring.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting, that, isn't it? Because it's often a meditation for when you see a limitless possibility, all you see is all your own stuff standing in the way.
Yeah.
And it's just who put this there? And it was me.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was all circumstance based, but it was all me at the end of the day. And it's just the intimidation of your creative higher self is a real rub. There's this something that I share at I share it in some of the coaching and the work that I do in trainings and stuff is if oak trees, 100-meter oak trees, had the mind of a human, they'd only be 10 meters tall.
Yeah, man. Absolutely.
And just that the negative self-talk and that lack of wanting to express and be ourselves, they would never reach to the majesty of who they really are. But and the irony in that is that we are the most complicated being that we're aware of. Yeah. And the beings that are simpler according to our standards and our perception and judgment of them, probably is the right word, they don't have these hang-ups. They're not self-limiting in these ways, They fulfill their form and their function fully.
I think there's no greater imperative for us as adult humans living in 2018 than to recover creatively, than to restore and reconnect and realign with that pure creative instinct that is innate in us. And it's funny, as you were saying that before, I think about just about a lot of these keynotes or sessions that I'll do, and I'll talk about education system at different points. Now, we inherited it. It's not pointing the finger. It's beautiful teachers. It's the best we got right now. It's not working. It's not effective anymore. We know this. But this is what we went through, and a lot of the people in the room went through. And so we'll talk about that, and then we'll create this other amazing conversation about what's possible and blah, 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 blah. And just about every time it gets to Q&A, someone will put their hand up and say, either I remember back in school this happened, and that's when I decided I wasn't going to create anymore. But the next question, or most of the time the first question is, so how are we going to fix our schools? And for me, what I mean, like, there's the first layer of like, oh, that's, yeah, cool. That's not the conversation we're going to have today, but you're thinking about your kids. You don't want the same thing to happen to them as it did to you. But for me, at least my interpretation of why that question always comes up is that a lot of these people are so resigned that they're not creative and that they're done. It's almost like, okay, cool. So you're clearly not talking about me. So let's focus on how I can fix it for my kids.
Support the next ones coming through.
Because I'm out. Like, I'm not creative. I'm done. So how can we fix our school for the kids? Wow. No, you're not done.
Yeah, you're just getting started.
Yeah, you're not fucking done. There's a lot of work to be done, and that's how deep this block is.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
It's full on.
That's why your podcast is so important. That's why these conversations are so important. Yeah.
Something that's come up for me while we're talking about creativity is just the reflection that we actually met on the common ground of health, because we're both really curious about health. And I think this is a perfect little segue into introducing just, I guess, my humble belief on vitality is that creativity is the key to your vitality.
Yeah.
Because to me, and this is like me being a full nerd about it, but the word vital means how vital are you to nature? And that is what supports your vitality as a human being, right? And you're vital if you're creating, because nature is fundamentally always creating. Yeah. And so a lot of my coaching and a lot of the mentoring, tries to introduce creativity, because health and wellness coach, but it's all like creativity is such a big part of it. And that's why I share a lot of stuff on Facebook, and I'm like playing the guitar or playing the handpan. And it's like, what does this have to do with this coaching? And it's like, I'm health and purpose, isn't it? Vitality, creativity. How vital are you to nature's creative process to express? Yeah. And I'm just like, I think this was the perfect little space to sort of have this conversation, because that's where we met in the pursuit of health.
Yeah, and I think that you are. That is a beautiful tangent or whatever we call it, because tying back with speaking about how people are so resigned, as though, no, that's it, I'm done, I'm not creative, I'll go and do other stuff. How vital creativity is for vitality, and yet on the one hand, how far we are from it. It makes sense, because we're so wounded and we're so hurt, and we got this baggage around it. We're so vulnerable when we create and we get laughed at, or when we, no one likes, or it's not as pretty as the next person, or whatever it is. But because it is so essential to our vitality, of course we would have that level of block around it. Like it's almost like the final frontier. It's not to make it the be all and end all, but it does make sense that why it's so, at least at this time in this place, it's easier for people to go, you know what, I'll just go and do that engineering degree. You know what, I'll just go and make the money. I'll just get set up. And then what's hilarious is then they come and see me when they're 45, 55, 65, pay me a lot of money to help them remember who they were when they were 16.
Mm-hmm.
And they've gone and done everything that they were supposed to have done in following the rules and making the money and doing the blah, blah, blah. But that final frontier, that final sense of vitality is it comes from that creativity, the innate. This is actually a beautiful conversation for me now, because sometimes I can get the space that I play in. I mean, I talk about artistry a lot, but people don't buy artistry. That's another whole level or beyond. They talk about innovation all the time. It's still tying into, but how is it effective? We can't just be creative. We need to be
we need
innovative.
The bottom line to move up.
Exactly. It's got to be practical, useful, so we can progress in some way.
Yeah.
You're going to meet Sonny. I think he's got. Anyway, I've completely lost my train of thought. That's my son.
You were talking about how the bottom line had to consistently push up, and then we were talking about, like, you were also mentioning how innovation was what people are consistently looking for.
That's right. So, yeah, they're looking for innovation, and sometimes I can get lost in, not lost. I almost get drawn into that, and I start giving them what they want and telling them what they want to hear, and then it is good for me to be reminded, stay strong. Yeah, sure. Tell them innovation. But once you got them, be really clear and direct. Don't dilute the message in any way. This is not about innovation. That's the end byproduct. Yep. We're talking about the vitality, the pure essence of existence being creative, divine, expression, whatever that is.
Yeah.
This is good, man. This is powerful.
It's it's intriguing to. I was thinking about two things at once, and sort of just fused into one thing. But I'm also aware that your kids are dropping in and out. So let's have a conversation about what was your, like, in your mind, what was your biggest? I know you mentioned that there was this guy that was doing it and living it the way that he wanted to. Yeah. What was your biggest inspiration coming onto the path that you're on now?
Oh,
I know inspiration is tough because you're a musician.
Yeah, I would say I saw the possibility of making. I saw the very beautiful cliched possibility of doing something I loved, doing something I was good at, and something that was valuable to others. And I really felt like, wow, that's the thing. And I think where we're going to get to now is this idea of identity and how important that is in driving and shaping your life and your work and your career and stuff like that, because there was a lot of hang-ups around I was a musician and I couldn't do what I'm doing now because that would be working for the man. But I enrolled everyone for 20 years in this idea that I was going to make it, all my close friends and family and stuff. And if I didn't, what did that mean about who I am? And I've got possibly another 60, 80 years of life left, but to have decided that, that didn't work, that's not who I am, has failed, collapsing what I did or was choosing to do for a while with who I am. And then somehow, through that unraveling of the travel, it gave me the space to starting to consider, and particularly choosing, I very consciously chose to do the bar because it was a long way from what I was. I spent a lot of time in bars, but I wasn't playing music. I was on the other side. I was making drinks. I was talking to people.
Books. Yeah.
All of that. So it was it was a big departure, which it gave me the time and the space to reconsider who I was in the world. And I also thought it was important, it was actually more effective doing that outside of my environment that I just left. And this is a critical piece because I actually had this conversation with someone yesterday. I can look back. I've had many developments in my life and career. Now I live in Geelong. I've got 2 kids. I live in this beautiful house. It's just super. It's bizarre how different my life is from all these different seasons. But each one of them, there has been, if I was reflecting on this yesterday, there's been a conscious decision to leave a particular environment or a particular space because I couldn't grow in it. And I couldn't, and it was no one's fault around me, but I needed who I was for me when speaking with them was keeping me locked and trapped in that identity. I needed to detach myself from them in order to progress. Which is powerful, and that's where it gets scary, and a lot of people worry. And you have to say goodbye to a few relationships. You have to say goodbye to a few things. Come in here, mate. Come on. Come meet Amrit.
How adorable do you want to be?
Hey.
G'day. Oh, I love your jumper.
Couldn't help himself.
Yo, he's adorable.
Yeah, he's all right. Come here. All right, you're on the podcast now. So when we met, I think he might have been in Kate's
was in
tummy.
Kate's belly.
Yeah, he was. Here, do you want to get him, actually?
Yeah, I want to.
And this is what it's like. You can see Kate.
Water and hey, Kate. How are you? Oh my God, you guys are thriving. Look at you go.
And there's Dusty as well. We're mid-interview here.
Yeah, you guys are doing great. No, this is perfect.
Yeah.
Oh,
right.
dude.
Yeah.
I'm spitting. Sorry.
You know that BBC clip last year of the... No, don't touch that, please. This is classic. Anyway, no, mate. No. Come on. Come here. Because that's a pretty important piece, is that you got to leave. You've got to be willing to say goodbye and to set fire to a few relationships. Yeah. Or in order for you to grow into the next iteration of you, and then you can return to them after. In a new way.
When you're a bit more integrated with the new vision of yourself, which is, I have to say, I was smiling as you were saying that, and I shouldn't have been because it was a deep reflective part, but I was smiling because I struggled with depression for about 5 years from adolescence, between 18 and 25. And when I got to 25, I finally, like, my whole world came crashing down, a whole nother story for another time. But what came out of that was I went to the psychologist and the therapist and said, look, my doctor, and said, look, this is what's been going on. And this whole other thing apart, they said, you've got depression. And that was a blessing. I hated it at the time, but it was like, oh, cool, there's a label I can sort of work with this, yeah? And 3 months after that, I left Adelaide.
Yes.
Against the idea of my psychologist, my doctor, my family, my friends, because it was like, mate, you've just been diagnosed with depression and you're going to move to Brisbane to get to Melbourne. Like, are you all right, mate? Like, you're gonna need a support network now more than ever. And I was smiling because exactly what you just shared, the imperative to, like, it wasn't the other people. It was just me in that environment that was ensconced into being that identity. And I was trapped and locked. And I was like, so where do I go now? Like, I need to, like, create a massive, like, small shift is not going to work. I need a massive wave. So I put yourself somewhere new, completely find yourself again, and, like, okay, what? And the amazing part is, as you would know, the truth is what sticks. Yeah, all the other parts of identity, when you've left, it's like, okay, so these were all, like, my social responsibilities and who I was to this person and that person and this person and that person. But as soon as you leave and you put yourself in a new environment, take yourself to India or, buy a bar, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, only the truth sticks. It's like, I can do this and I can do this and this is who I am,
Yeah,
and it's this really incredible conversation, because I don't think, like, I've ever, like, shared this with too many people. It's like, that's a really intense process, but it's incredible. It's so liberating.
It's powerful. Funnily enough, I'm from Adelaide. And
only took us an hour to figure that out. How did that happen?
And when I went overseas for a couple of years, did stuff, but then when I came back, I moved to Brisbane.
There you go.
Man.
And now you're in Melbourne. How's
the but what's funny? I mean, the conversation about Adelaide is for another day.
Yeah.
But what I find really, really intriguing, it sounds like in both of our stories, but I think this is applicable for all of us. I miss some of the people. I miss some of the lives. I miss who I was in previous iterations of who I am. But it stagnates and you get sick.
Yeah.
And, like, I had a thing the year before last, as soon as we got pregnant with Sunny, my skin just went bad all over my face. Part of the reason where I met you with Mason, Kate is so into, health.
Yep.
And I went, I'll come along. I needed some way to fix this thing, not be on pharmaceutical drugs.
Yep.
And it was the house we were living in. It was the job, it was the stuff I was doing. It was all of this stuff. And we moved down here and it's like night and day.
Yeah.
And say goodbye to certain people that I miss and I love and I would love to
see more of.
Yeah, of course. And there's no, and even, to be brutally honest, I mean, I know that there are people in my life over the last 15 years that probably think, where is he? Who is he? Who does he think he is? He doesn't call, or he stopped calling, he stopped coming around. Does he think he's better than us? Whatever it is. They have no idea that it's the complete opposite of thinking that I'm better than anyone. It's more, I'm in a pit of shame, or I need some way out of this, or I need to take care of myself and heal.
Yeah.
And that means detaching myself from this environment for a while, not because of them at all.
Yeah.
But in order to be with them in the future.
Of course.
It's powerful, man.
And it's a deep journey, that one, isn't it? Especially when you're learning that especially what you're touching on is like honoring the self. It's like, it's all about honoring the self. It's like all this has happened and, finding your own way, but consistently coming into honoring the self and this is what we're saying, like removing yourself from an environment. Only what's true is what sticks. And like, you really find like, okay, I need to honor myself again and again. And if I'm serving you from a place where I'm not honoring myself, you can think what you want of me, but I'm not, it's a disservice.
Exactly.
So I really need to find myself in all of that. Wow. So I could talk to you forever.
Me too, man. Can I say one more thing? Because I think you're going to wrap it up now, but something just came to me as you were speaking.
Let's do it.
And I just thought, for some reason I just thought about people that do well. Not necessarily celebrities, but people that are good at something, or people that progress, and the world tells them they're really good at it.
Yep.
A lot. Mm-hmm. And that really helps. Like being told a lot, hey, you're really good at this, hey, you're really good at this, hey, you start believing it, and there's a new baseline for what you think you're capable of, or what you think you're, and you own the room differently, and in the way that in the places or spaces that your strengths lie. There's a swagger about you.
Of course.
Now, for you or I, we don't have an entourage of people telling us that we're amazing, that we're creative, that we're innovative, that we can be these entrepreneurs. We can live the life that we were destined to live. We don't have those people around us yet, but we have ourselves, and like it's all we've got, really, and it's all we've ever got. And so if there was anything from this whole conversation, to leave your people with, is that if you could do nothing else, quietly in a journal, or when no one's looking, late at night, first thing in the morning, throughout the day, if you can just tell yourself how fucking great you are, how creative you are, how awesome you are, how the choices you're making are leading somewhere meaningful, are leading somewhere beautiful, are worthwhile. Like just hammer it home, even if you don't believe it.
Yeah.
I think that will give you enough to get to a point where you start putting some work out, to get to a point where you start making connections, to get to a point where someone else goes, hey, man, I'm digging the podcast, man. This is amazing. To then someone else goes, hey, I'd love for you to come on my podcast. And then someone else goes, hey, we'd love to give you money to do the podcast full time. To then on and on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
But it really does begin and end with just love yourself, stupid, is what I'm getting at,
Love it. And the biggest, for some of my clients, the thing that helps, that I consistently keep seeing in this, exactly what you're framing is, there's this... when we're so hard on ourselves, when we do something wrong, it's like it sticks for hours, days, months. And when we do something good, it's just like zoof. It's like didn't even happen. And so like a big part of what I flex with a lot of my clients is like, okay, let's stop and let's learn to just pat yourself on the back. Because that's something that I've found so vital, and I can see it happening. It's like I recently bought a guitar for the first time.
Amazing.
I've been playing it for a month, And my girlfriend's like, she's not intentionally doing this, she's just a lovely person, but she's like, oh, that sounds really good. And I can see what that does in, like, I'm like, because I'm super present when you're playing the guitar, I can see what that just did in my head. It was like, dunk, 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 dunk.
Exactly.
Yeah! And positive reinforcement is incredible. And I'm mystified by like why we're so like foreign to this, because when I look at my dog and I've had people come and teach me how to train my dog, right? Yeah. And they're like, instead of telling her off all the time, you're just building this negative relationship where she's like, and you're like, and she's like, and you're like, they're like, wait, she's doing the right thing, and just been like, good gal. Good gal. And I've like, people think I'm nuts. They come over and I'm just saying that because she's doing the right thing. She's just hanging out. And I'm just like, good gal, and just consistently snapshotting the positive behavior. But we can't even, exactly what you just said is so vital. If you can cultivate that by just when the small wins and just going, that was awesome. Like today I went for a walk, I don't normally walk, or today I took the stairs, or just like small things. Today I put out a Facebook Live, or today I got my website, like whatever it is, and just be like, I fucking did that. And then if you have to, go celebrate it with like, if wine's your thing, go get some wine. If you enjoyed dinner, go take yourself out to dinner, or, whatever it takes for you to really anchor that in. It's, super potent message. Thank you so much for sharing that, bro. Thank you. Before you leave, what is a book that you would recommend? One book. I don't know, it's so hard to pick one. One book.
Okay, for you. I would think, what is it? It's just over there. Hang on 2 seconds and I'll go and get it. I'll be back.
Perfect.
It'll be very quick.
Do you think?
Okay. The Untethered Soul. Mykel Singer.
Awesome.
Yeah.
This was also recommended by Murray Kyle, who interestingly enough is the other musician that's appeared on the podcast.
Really?
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Yeah, great. It's a good one.
Brilliant. And if I may ask, now the question goes, if we could put your message on a billboard in Times Square, New York, all that flux, all that energy, what would your message read to the masses, brother?
Why not?
Yeah, I love it. It's so good. Yeah, brilliant. Love it.
On that, I don't know why that came to me, but I just remembered there was actually a Cambodian guy who worked at the bar 2 doors down from where mine was, and poor as anything, and would just work non-stop, being ground. It was a local owner of the bar, and never had a day off, whatever, but he'd come over late and he'd try to get a couple of beers in and smoke a few cigarettes, and all you just beaming happiness, just beaming joy, like unbelievably. And his reply to just about everything, and the end of every single sentence was, sure, why not? Why not? And it was just to so many traveling people, the profound conversations that were begun from meeting that guy around, why not?
Yeah.
Like, why not, man?
I love people like that. It's just like so simple. Like their wisdom is just distilled into so like simplicity. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
And thank you so much for having me. It's an honor, a pleasure, and a privilege. I'm very grateful.
You're not getting away that easy. I've got one last question. So this is by far my favorite question. And it goes along the lines of, beyond Mykel Dixon, beyond the artist, beyond the speaker, beyond the skin suit, it's metaphysical in its nature. Who are you?
I am you.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Love it.
I am all of your listeners. I am that beautiful tree out my window. I'm sunny. I am yesterday. I'm tomorrow. I am all of it.
Yum. Thank you so much.
You're so great.
Wow. So I have to say, now I'll give thanks. Thank you, man. Like, wow. Just the minute I tuned into like the excitement of having you on the podcast, it was just this complete, it wasn't even like, oh, there's an alignment, we could talk about something. It was just like, and as the listeners would have found, it was just like, the future is for the creatives. It was just like, yes, dog. So I've just been like super, super, super pumped to have you
Amazing.
on. And I'm really grateful for the chat that we had. And I feel like there's a lot more to come.
Yeah, me too.
So that is what it is. But man, thank you so much, and for just the authenticity and the humility and the vulnerability with which you really shared and opened yourself up to in this space. And I can see that you bring that not just today, but also to all the work you've been doing on yourself and the work you will do on yourself. So thank you for always showing up the way that you do. It really is a blessing to receive that. Thank you.
You're awesome. You're awesome, man.
Can I just quickly throw in, if someone wants to get in touch with you, how do they find Mykel Dixon?
Mykeldixon.com. Any handle on any social media. I've got to get back on my vlog train, but it's a pretty funky way to get to know me is the weekly vlogs. There's no other Mykel Dixons out there, so pretty easy.
Nice and unique. And there's a whole bunch of content on YouTube as well, guys, with some really good thoughts. I'd highly recommend tuning in to Mykel Dixon on YouTube as well if you can. Thank you for your blessings, brother.
Amazing.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Love of the Inspired Evolution and sharing the Love of the Inspired Evolution. If you feel like this content has supported you or may support anyone else that you know may resonate with the content of it, please share away and share the love around. Thank you guys so much. And to stay up to date on whatever's coming out with the Inspired Evolution, please subscribe. There's all these links in the bio for you to tune into the episodes and all these different platforms, just so the message can get to you and your loved ones. Thank you so much for all your love and support. Stay inspired to evolve.